I am back for my first ever Gen Con, and let me tell y'all, con crud is no joke. I got back from that convention and it felt like an Arizona tenor had possessed my body. I was just coughing and sneezing and all sorts of gross, laid up on the couch for days, but I am better now and it's time to tell you all about my Gen Con experience.
We are at GenCon 2025.
Hi, I'm Peter, creator and lead designer of Tales from Elsewhere, and this video has three specific goals. To tell you about my Gen Con experience from the perspective of a consumer, a content creator, and a game designer, and the value I got out of that from each of those three parts of my personality, so that you can judge whether or not it's worthwhile for you to go next year. So let's dive into this brief conversation about my first Gen Con experience and what value I got out of it. So outside of my role as a content creator and game designer, I'm also a consumer of tabletop products. I play board games and role-playing games and card games and have for 30 years now. So it was a dream come true to actually go to Gen Con and get to experience that as a consumer of these games. There was something for everyone, regardless of the type of game you were into, from live action role-playing to trading card games to board games and role-playing games. There was just everything there, and it was incredible to see so many passionate people and designers and studios and publishers all in one place. I haven't been buying a lot of hard copy books lately, mainly because I wanted to wait till Gen Con to get a chance to buy them from the vendors directly, to actually meet the designers and folks involved and purchase my games from them. And that's what I did. I ended up getting several games simply because I walk up to their stalls within the grand exhibit hall and just feel compelled to buy something. And because they had their products there, I could flip through them and really gauge whether or not I wanted to purchase something before I did so. Now, some games I knew I was going to get ahead of time. Like, I knew I was going to pick up a hard copy of Shadow Dark because I didn't actually own a physical copy of this yet. But as I was walking around the show floor, I also came across Heroes of Mythic America. And for those that have watched my channel and know a little bit about me, you know how passionate I am about indigenous mythology within North America, Central America, and South America. And this was a D&D 5e campaign setting book specifically about that. Now, I don't run a lot of D&D 5e these days, but the campaign ideas within it I thought would be super fun. I also stopped by Free League, as one would, which was absolutely bopping, and picked up a copy of The One Ring. Now, I've been having my eye on this for a while, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to purchase it, but then I opened up the very first inner cover, saw this map of Eriador in Middle-earth, and knew I had to get a copy. And there's something really special about that. I also ended up getting a copy of the basic role-playing game book, which I've never actually read in full. Call of Cthulhu is something I read, and fellow content creator and game designers Frank and Charles from What is Tabletop actually gave this to me as a gift while I was there, which was amazing. And lastly, I picked up Eclipse Phase 2nd Edition, which I had read 1st edition years and years ago, and I ended up talking to one of the creators of this game, and it motivated me to buy it. More on that in my game design section later in this video. And what was really cool about board game or card game shopping is you could go by their booths in the exhibit hall and actually demo the games. There were people there to show you the game and pitch it to you and even run through a few turns of various games. And we ended up picking up some board games simply because we got a chance to play them. And that's not something you can easily do when you're browsing for games online. So as a consumer, getting to go to Gen Con and interfacing with the people who make the games and getting a chance to put your hands on them before you purchase was a great way to make smart purchases rather than online. And there were thousands of different games on display of all sorts of different genres, and it's really hard to surface what games you'd like to get when you're shopping alone at home. But as you walk through the exhibit hall and get to see the games out there, your eye can be drawn to something that you would have not stumbled upon otherwise. Like that Heroes of Mythic America, I happened to be walking by and saw some miniatures, some painted minis of Aztec warriors wielding macuitos. And I thought, that's super cool, I'm going to stop here and take a look at it. Or we were passing by a board game booth that had artwork and images that reminded us of Super Smash Brothers. And it was actually a board game that you can buy that's like a fighting game board game that was so fun. We actually missed our flight out of Indianapolis because of it. We weren't sitting close enough to the gate and got really absorbed in a game and missed our first flight. And that wouldn't have happened had we not just been passing by and seen a game on display. So again, as a consumer, being able to stumble upon new games and interact in that way was something very special. But word of warning, if you're going as a consumer, remember that you need to have space in your luggage to fit everything you buy for the return trip. I'm flying from Los Angeles all the way to Indiana, and so I had to bring a bunch of suitcases with all of the gear I needed to run games because I was going as a designer and running sessions of Tales from Elsewhere. So I had limited space to actually pack things back into my luggage on the return. So plan ahead, leave empty spaces in your luggage specifically for games, books, and so forth that you may purchase. So as a consumer, I would say it's worth it to go to GenCon. Maybe not every year if the expenses are great, like you have to fly a long distance and rent an expensive hotel. But the sense of community and the ability to connect directly with the artists and designers and creators of these various games was very special. It puts a face to these books and products we have on our shelves, and spontaneously meeting other fans and of those games and just getting to connect with people like that was incredible. So highly recommend it if you are a consumer of tabletop products. Next, I'd like to tell you about my experience as a content creator at GenCon. So I went live on YouTube in August 2024, and in the last year, I've met so many wonderful people. And my first GenCon was made all the more special because I had a group of friends already ready to go. People that were excited to meet me and hang out with me, and we planned around that. And that made it so special. I basically had a little entourage, a group of buddies that we rolled with most of the weekend.
This is a crazy little entourage right behind me, isn't it? Like, the shot is going to be weird.
I was with Jorben the Elder Goblin, Frank and Charles from What Is Tabletop, Scrap from A Squirrel Plays, and occasionally with Zachary, the creator of Peasantry TTRPG. And these were kind of my boys the whole weekend. I came with two people, Tim the editor and Daniel the dev, who are both working with me on Tales from Elsewhere. And so in total, we had like 7 to 9 people rolling with us at any given time, and it gave this great sense of community and fun where I didn't feel like I was alone the whole con. We were always getting lunch together, grabbing drinks after the con together, and it just made it really wholesome. Because these were people that I'd been interacting with digitally over the last year, making videos together, chatting with, running games, but I'd never actually met any of them in person. And getting to meet face to face and just hang out was a great reminder of how content creators, people on YouTube, we're just regular people too, and we're not special or sacrosanct in some way. We're just a bunch of people who love games and like to talk about them online. And getting a chance to really connect on that more personal level just really reinforces how wonderful it is to be on a platform and getting a chance to talk to you, the community, and to other content creators. And I had the surreal experience of a couple people recognizing me, just saying like, hey, are you Peter from Tales from Elsewhere? And that was utterly bizarre. Now, I'm not big in any way. I'm not a Ginny D or Diana of the Rose or anything like that. So people on the street weren't shouting out my name. But just the fact that a few people recognized me and stopped me to comment on that was pretty darn cool. Just to know that my videos and my efforts to educate people and facilitate conversations around TTRPG design have reached a wide audience. And that was really great to meet people in person and get a chance to talk with them. And that was just very special as a content creator, because so much of what we do is purely digital. It's remote. There are these barriers between me and you out there watching, however you're watching me right now. And getting a chance to break away that barrier, to shatter that and be more personal, meant a lot. And apart from my little cadre of boys that I ran with, right, my boys, I also had a chance to meet so many other content creators within this space because they were all there. I ran into Will from D&D Shorts, who I'd gotten a chance to play Indominant with several months ago. I talked to Ginny D for a while about the movie Labyrinth and just how cool it is. Ran into Diana the Rose, there was a Matt Mercer sighting, didn't get a chance to talk to him. Ran into Indestructible at a bar and chatted him up for a bit. Ran into Naigobi and Crow and Bone Wizard, just all of these content creators who I'm such a big fan of were there, and I got to rub elbows with them for a while. I got to chat with Richie from Legends of Evantris, of all people, just about folklore-based horror and game design. I met up with Amy Vorpal, who I knew outside of this, but got a chance to hang with her at these events. I met Ivan Van Norman, who worked at Darrington Press for years and is a legend in the industry. Just so many people in the content creator space that I got to hang with and meet. And that is truly special as a content creator. And so if you are a content creator and considering going to GenCon, I highly recommend it. Everyone was so friendly and wonderful, and no one was comparing the subscriber count. It didn't matter that Ginny D is an order of magnitude larger than I am on the platform. That doesn't matter. We were just two people hanging out and talking about being content creators in general and about this wonderful hobby. And just walking around the halls, you meet random people, even outside of these sort of content creator mixers and after parties. On one of the last days, I ran into Professor DM, just walking down the hall, said hi, took a picture with him, just awesome guy. At the airport, I ran into Spencer Stark, the lead designers of Daggerheart, and got to talk game design with him for a few minutes. They're just everywhere, and they're so approachable and wonderful, and that made me feel so welcomed in that community as somebody who's fairly new to it still. But a word of warning, if you are a content creator and going to GenCon, the after parties are intense. Now, I'm an old man and I don't really party much, and some of these events were open bar, and so it's kind of wild, and it ran late. I mean, at some of these events, I was getting back to my Airbnb at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is pretty gnarly when I have to get up at 7 a.m. the next day to run 6 hours of games. So get your health together before you go to one of these events and before you spend time networking, because my voice still hasn't really recovered from these loud late nights at bars just rubbing elbows with people. It was absolutely worth it, but be warned that you want to make sure you're hydrating and you're healthy and you have your emergency doses ready to go to keep yourself healthy if you're not used to a party lifestyle. Lastly, I'm going to talk about my experience as a game designer at GenCon and the value I got out of that experience, because it was amazing. Between myself and Daniel, my buddy who came with me, we ran a total of 7 sessions of Tales from Elsewhere for various tables, and it was a blast. Getting a chance to run your game for strangers was incredibly informative from a playtesting standpoint, and just from a community building one. Our game is very late in development, of course, as we're kickstarting in just a few weeks at the airing of this video, but getting a chance to show that to strangers was absolutely incredible. All of our sessions were totally sold out. We ended up having a few cancellations here and there, but getting a chance to be out there at a large convention for your game was very informative. And as a game designer, I had the great privilege of running a session for some other content creators. I had networked beforehand and specifically set up a private Tales from Elsewhere Clockworld session for Wally DM, Frank and Charles from What is Tabletop, and Jorben the Elder Goblin, as well as one random guy who just came along for the ride. And it was an absolute blast. Now, we have a separate video going into that experience, but if you are designing a game, having a specific session that you're going to record and really utilize for advertising and for getting the word out, it's very much worthwhile to do so. And what makes the in-person aspect of GenCon so special is you can interface face-to-face with other game designers and really talk shop in a context you wouldn't normally be able to. For example, I watched a live session of Fiasco, found out about this through Amy Vorpal, who's a friend of mine, and it was absolutely hilarious. Just the most riotous improv show I've seen. Now, I noticed though, as it was running, that it didn't really follow the rules of normal Fiasco. And so after the session was done, after the show, I ended up meeting with the guy who ran the game, a man named Davidson Cole. Now, Davidson Cole, for those who don't know, has been in the industry for many, many years. He worked on Shadowrun and Battletech, and he's been part of the team that makes Eclipse phase, and he's working on his own board game called Scum. And I ran into him at an after party and went up to him and said, I noticed you left negative space in this session of Fiasco by removing certain mechanics like dice and so forth. And I told him, I'm pretty sure this was all very intentional the way you did that. And he just said, I'm so glad somebody noticed. And we ended up talking about the concept of negative space or fruitful voids in game design for quite a while at this whiskey bar off-site. And that was such a cool connection to make as a designer, talking to somebody who really does operate at that high level of abstraction and really gets that challenge you have for designing a game to be played and for who the audience is that should be playing it. And I wouldn't have had a chance to connect with Davidson if I hadn't have gone to GenCon. And at that same event, I ran into Ivan Van Norman, who ran Darrington Press for like 5 years and now is working on his own production company, Hunters Entertainment. And I was able to just chat him up about logistics, about fulfillment when it comes to making your own tabletop role-playing game. He even very generously took a look at my Kickstarter page and my YouTube channel and gave me some feedback and guidance about what I've been doing. And that was incredibly invaluable. Just a chance to talk to him and get his industry insights, as he is a veteran of this space and has operated at the highest levels of production. So just the chance to meet up with him and talk for a few minutes was incredibly valuable as a game designer. And as I mentioned in the previous section, getting a chance to just walk the exhibit hall and talk to some of the people who've made the games is just so cool as a designer. I got to talk to a writer who works at Free League. I talked to Kelsey Dione briefly, right? Creator of Shadow Dark. These are just people wandering the halls, and you can get some one-on-one time briefly with them as they stand at their booths. If you ever wanted an insight into why people made some of those games, they're just there selling their game and are just so passionate about discussing it with you. They're great networking and insight opportunities. But do note, if you are a game designer and you're looking to make connections and network at GenCon, you really have to be brave. You have to be willing to just walk up to people and start a conversation and know how networking works. You can't just walk up to people and kind of fangirl out like I did when I ran into Ross Bryant at one of these after parties. And you're just saying, oh, I love your work. You're so cool and so smart with your improvised Shakespeare, and sort of shook his hand and walked away awkwardly. You have to be able to make connections in a way that is natural and a way that isn't parasitic or uncool in that way. And that can be challenging. There's so many people out there at these events and so many designers, and they're all willing to talk shop with you if you can, get over some of that social networking fear. So overall, with all three of these types of contexts, whether you're a consumer, a content creator, or a game designer, I found GenCon incredibly worthwhile. But I got the con crud as soon as I got back. You're just exposed to so many people, it's almost inevitable that you'll be exposed to some sort of sickness, so I was laid low for a little while, but it was absolutely worth it. Particularly if you're leading up to a big crowdfunding campaign like I am, because my Kickstarter is going live in just a matter of weeks. It goes live September 2nd. There will be a link down below to the sign-up page to be notified of its launch, and I really do hope you check it out. It's been a lot of work over the last several years to get to this point, including going to GenCon, and so it means a lot if you could take a look at that page and maybe consider supporting us and picking up our game. All right, folks, I need to go rest my voice and recover more from the con crud, but I hope you have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you here next week on Tales from Elsewhere.